Hello everyone and welcome to today's session on creating marketing plans for law firms. This is part of Actionstep's series on law firm marketing. So there are a range of other webinars available through our website which cover off topics like business development planning, content marketing, digital marketing and much more. So please feel free to take a look at all of those and that will hopefully give you a really holistic sense of best practice in law firm marketing. So my name is Trina Saunders. I am the Global Vice President of Marketing for Actionstep, and I'm joined by my colleague, Erin Victor, who is our US Marketing Lead. So you might ask yourself why two software marketers are talking to you about law firm marketing, and that is a valid question. And the answer is that both Erin and I are both ex-legal marketers. We both of us spent most of our careers in legal marketing working for large law firms, mid-sized law firms, and smaller law firms. Erin in the US and myself in the US and Europe. So we have a really good sense of what goes into a really strong marketing plan, and not just the plan itself, but the process behind it. So what we're going to talk to you about today is very much the culmination of what we see as best practice around plan development. And we'll just talk you through the steps involved and how to go through it in a really practical way so that you and your team can manage it. So in terms of what we're going to cover, first of all, just want to go through, what makes up a really good marketing plan. So what are the elements that you need to consider? What are the things that you need to have as inputs? And what will the overall plan look like by the time you're finished? We're going to walk through goal setting and how you set goals that are achievable and that your team can actually really rally around and feel like they have control over. We're going to talk about targeting the right prospects. And how you actually target and how you create almost mini plans around targets. We're also going to talk about marketing channels and how you approach those and what are the right marketing channels for your law firm versus any other law firm. And then we're going to talk a little bit about how to bring the plan to life. And I also just want to mention that we do have a guide associated with this webinar. It's really a workbook on how to develop your marketing plan. So we will send that out after the session today, and it'll just arrive to you by email. So that will help you just to go through these steps step by step. So you don't need to necessarily take notes today. You'll have the guide to walk you through this just as I talk. First of all, why do you need a marketing plan? And this may be obvious to some, but not to others. There's three real reasons why marketing planning is fundamentally important to what you're doing. If you're spending money on marketing, you have to have a plan to make sure that you're doing it in the most cost-effective way possible. And so I like to summarize these in the three P's of marketing planning. First of all, priorities. By going through the process of planning, you actually rule a lot of things out. So you narrow down what your focus is going to be from a marketing point of view. It makes sure that you're prioritizing the type of activities that you're doing, the time you spend on marketing, so that it's really, really only on the stuff that works for your firm and is effective at the end of the day. Also, the work that goes into planning makes you really look at where your revenue is coming from. And it really makes you understand the underlying profitability of different marketing activities, different client types, different practice areas, different teams, all of that. And so the profitability is obviously at the core of what we're trying to do here by creating a marketing plan. That every activity we do, every client that we target is really adding to your profitability over time. And thirdly, performance. And so one of the things that's vitally important in producing a marketing plan is that you're very, very clear around the performance you expect out of every channel, every team, or every practice area. And so by going through the plan in a very structured way and choosing the benchmarks that you're going to use to measure performance against, you have something that is really, really practical. It's like a measuring stick for your return on investment on all of your marketing activities. So now we're going to talk about how you actually put the plan together. I will just say quickly that there's quite a lot of pre-work to be done before you actually sit down to write your plan. That work is covered in another webinar, our business development planning for law firms webinar, which goes through what I have on the screen here, which are some of the key reports that you should have to hand before you actually start making some of the decisions that will go into your marketing plan. So you really need to arm yourself with the information you need to make the right decisions around your marketing plan. So I'm not going to go into these now, but you can see on the screen, these are the key reports that you should be looking at and aiding you in making your decisions. So what are the fundamentals of a good marketing plan? I have here on the screen 6 fundamentals of a good marketing plan in my view. We are going to go through a SWOT. I'm sure many of you are very familiar with a SWOT analysis, but sometimes people don't necessarily go through that exercise in a way that's as helpful as it should be in relation to what you need for your plan. It should include target prospects, and we're going to talk about how we actually target and manage the targeting of prospects. It should obviously include some goals, which will underpin your entire marketing plan. It's going to cover off your approach to different channels that you want to use. And it's going to detail the very specific activity that you and your team are going to actually undertake in order to meet your goals. And it also has to have a budget. You have to have budget associated with the different activities that you've outlined. So that's fundamental. Quickly on SWOT, and we know SWOT is strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. I just want to talk about what you focus on in those 4 buckets. In terms of strengths, it's really about what is your USP as a firm. So it's not just the kind of, plain vanilla things that you typically think of as strengths, like, people or expertise or those sorts of things. They have to be differentiating. They have to really set you apart from your competitors and give you somewhat of an edge. Those are the things you want to put in the box. You can almost assume some of the other things are a given. So really focus on the things that, no other firm or very few firms can actually say about themselves. In terms of weaknesses, again, these should be very firm specific. These are not market-based weaknesses. These are not, regulatory weaknesses or anything outside of the firm. These are things that you specifically can control at your firm that needs to be improved. So whether it's, talent around certain areas, or whether it's weaknesses in particular practice expertise, or whether it's your systems, or whether it's how you manage particular types of matters, it should be specific, and it should be very, very specific to your firm. Opportunities and threats then are looking outside the firm. So they are very much focused on what's happening in the market. So what opportunities could your firm potentially leverage? What are the market trends? What are the things that are changing that might help you, that you might be able to target and really leverage in terms of new business development? And then what are the things that are changing in the market that actually affect you in a negative way, or that you worry might affect you in a negative way? Again, strengths and weaknesses are internal, opportunities and threats external. And this should give you a really nice canvas for what's actually happening, and what you can leverage and what you can de-risk around. So goal setting. So the framework that I really like to use is SMART goal setting. So this, I feel, really gives you a framework to interrogate your goals, so that what you're actually writing down and putting into your plan is something that's going to set you up for success. So just to run through these very quickly, you can see that SMART is an acronym for a number of words associated with each goal. So first of all, you want to make sure that what you're actually putting into your plan as a goal is really specific. So you're not just putting down quite a broad goal, like, we want to be the best litigation practice. You need to put some specificity in there so that it really makes sense to your firm. So you might want to say that you want to be the top choice litigation practice for the construction industry in your specific state. So, really making sure that you're putting specifics in there so that it's much clearer about what you're going for. Secondly, you want to make sure that it's measurable. There should be a number of some kind beside every single goal, whether it's, number of new clients, or whether it's, volume of dollars coming in, or whether it's, 10 more billable hours associated with that particular activity. You really, really want to have something that is number-based and that you can track against. Thirdly, achievable. Is it realistic? Is it something that you really feel with your current team, your current resources, you can actually manage to do? And if not, then either, pull back on that slightly, scale back, or look at how you actually resource it in a way that's going to allow you to achieve that if it is something that is absolutely fundamental to what you need to do. Third of all, relevance. Relevance is a key one, because you can have something that's specific and measurable and achievable, but has no bearing whatsoever on what your firm is trying to do overall. So you want to make sure that your marketing goals are very much aligned with your overall strategic goals as a business, and that they're synced. Particularly if you have a lot of practice areas, you want to make sure that there's relevance across the practice areas, that they're all working towards the same overall firm goals. And then lastly, timed. These goals need to be time bound. You need to know when you want to have achieved this by. And so for every single goal that we're going to go through, I'm assuming that this is the framework that we would do it in. And this really allows you to, set you and your team up for success. It allows you to rinse and repeat and iterate on certain things if they're not working. And so really important to keep that SMART goal idea in mind. So the first set of goals that I want to look at is around revenue. So, the question would be, what is the overall annual practice revenue target? And so when I say practice, this could be an individual practice, or it could be your overall practices in your law firm. And really, we're obviously trying to get to an overall number here. So what are you overall trying to achieve? But rather than, picking last year's number and adding 10%, which isn't a bad way to start, you really want to validate that by making sure that you actually also build up the steps to get to that overall number. And how you would typically do this is by really, breaking down the expected annual revenue from, different sub-practices, from different clients, from, targets that you might go after, or referral sources that you have ongoing relationship with, or plan to build. So, it's important to look back and see how each of these things have performed historically. It's also important to think about what you're going to do to improve each of these things, and make a judgment call as to what you think this will add to your overall new revenue, and that will help to build towards your overall revenue goal. So, things to think about. Are there market opportunities or dynamics that makes it likely that each of these things, that your current clients, that the people you're targeting, etc., will actually be, more successful or less successful this year? So really think about that. Are there, relationship dynamics that are at play between, certain clients in the firm, or the people who are managing them at your firm? Are there weaknesses there that you need to be aware of that could potentially impact revenue from clients that you've always relied upon as being really, really strong revenue generators? Or similarly, are there issues with some of your typical referral sources? You might have a really good third-party advisor who sends you a lot of referrals, but if they're retiring, what's going to happen next? So, think about, your historical performance, but also what's likely to happen to each of those sources of revenue going forward. So the next type of goal that I want to talk about is client types, or even sectors. So which client types and which sectors do you think are going to contribute to your success in the coming year? And you should probably look at this by each sub-practice area, rather than looking at the whole firm if you're a multi-practice firm. Obviously, if you're a boutique firm, then this is a lot easier. So what are the specific types of clients and the specific sectors where you see future growth? How many of these would you ideally need to make a difference to your business economics? Do you need an extra, 10 of those types of clients? Do you need an extra 100 of those types of clients? For each practice, there's going to be very, very different numbers associated with this particular goal. And I suppose you really need to ask yourself, how achievable is that? With the resources I have, again, with the team that I have, how likely is it that I can actually achieve that? So, there might be a client type that is particularly lucrative, but they don't come along very often. And so it's unrealistic to say we're going to have, 10, 20 of those. But maybe if you had an extra one or two, it really would make quite a big difference to your practice and to your revenue. So what you have to think about what the ideal mix of client type is. In order to define this goal, some of the things that I would advise you think about are there market changes or areas of economic investment happening, or a change in regulation that makes it likely that work from these clients is actually going to increase or potentially is going to decrease? And how does that affect the goal that you apply to those types of clients? I would also think about what kind of access you have to clients like that or to that particular sector. Do you already have clients, for example, in that sector that you can leverage, that you can use as a case study, or that you can ask for introductions to others in their field? Do you have access to things like associations or online forums or other groups or events, or do you have a target list that you can use for that particular client type for your marketing purposes? So that's what I mean by access, is how are you actually going to get at these client types that you have a goal around. And similarly, relationships. So in addition to potentially leveraging, client relationships, potentially you have other partners in the firm who could introduce you to this client type, or you might have, referral relationships outside of the firm that could give you really good access as well. And you can nurture that referring relationship in order to get access to that client type. So when you write down your goal around this particular topic, so around client type or sector, again, I would very much think about, doing the maths, I suppose, on the revenue build. So, if you got 5 more of, this client type, what is the likelihood that it's going to have a pretty big impact on your bottom line? And is it going to be easy or hard to achieve that? How much effort is going to have to go into targeting that particular client type and getting access to them and winning work from them? Is it a 1-year effort? Is it a 2-year effort? Is it a 3-year effort? So those are all the sort of things that you want to think about when you're thinking about the types of clients that really work well for your practice. So the next goal that I want to talk about is around type of work. So similar to what we just discussed in relation to client type or sector, type of work is also one that is interesting because you want to get a balance of the right type of work across your practice. You obviously want to look at the type of work that is more profitable and ask yourself, is that work that we can continue to get and build more of and really focus on? Or is that always going to be edge case or the kind of cream on top of what we do? There's obviously, types of work that are more suitable to partners in your practice or that are more suitable to associates or paralegals, etc. And so you want to make sure you get the right balance of work across all of your team. And the other piece to consider as well is what type of work is fulfilling for you and your team. There's always going to be work that is rinse and repeat, that is more run of the mill, and then there's work that might be really, really interesting or a bit groundbreaking, or has a little bit of novelty around it. And getting, that's not to be underestimated, getting that balance right so that everyone in your team continues to learn and to challenge and stretch themselves, particularly when there's so much competition for talent at the moment. Making sure that your team is doing interesting work is really important. So again, I would ask yourself, like, do I have enough access to clients that I can actually produce this type of work, or can engage us on this type of work, and what do I need to do to actually get that type of access and leverage the expertise that we may already have around that type of work? If you don't have expertise around that type of work, what do you need to do to actually build that, and who in your team is going to be the person to spearhead it? So those type of questions really helps you to set realistic goals, but it also helps you to craft the type of marketing activities and the type of business development engagement that you want to put into your plan. So next, I want to talk about market position. So having a goal around market position is also important. This is sort of like a vision, I suppose, for your practice. So if you were to think, 1 year from now or 3 years from now, what would you see as your ideal place in the market? How would you like to be known? How would you like to be perceived by others? And how would you like to be positioned against, maybe some of your competitors or other firms in the market? Are there firms or practices that you admire that you'd like to emulate? Or are there areas of your practice that you would like to change the perception of? Maybe it's like the type of expertise that you have, or what you're good at, or client service. And how are you going to do that? And so, this whole area, market position, perhaps seems harder to measure. Because they are, sort of in the hearts and minds of your clients, really. But actually, there are some very practical things that you can do to make sure that you set a goal that is measurable. And some of the things that we typically see law firms doing in order to measure this, market position type of goal is, client surveys, NPS surveys, net promoter scores, directory rankings, seeing that you're improving on directory rankings, or simply just conducting client interviews. I mean, it doesn't need to be a huge survey. It might be just a sort of a pulse check on some of your key clients and getting some feedback from them on how they see you in the market and how they see your performance and what they see as your strengths, and how you're positioned against competitors. So, those are a few examples of different ways that you can measure a goal that you might set around market position. Finally, goal setting around your team. So your team obviously is going to be the conduit to, making sure that these goals get put into practice and actually happen. And there's two things that's important to think about in relation to the team. First of all, what roles are the team going to play? So who is going to be the person who organizes the plan, who sets up how you measure and is actually going to measure and report back on how it's working? Who is going to be the person on the team who does the heavy lifting on business development or gaining access to particular client groups or engages with associations? Who is going to be the person on the team who puts their back into developing out expertise that you may or may not have, or maybe just capturing expertise in a way that helps you to market? And then the other big piece is around profile. So in most teams, there will be people who are better known in the marketplace. And it's important to think about how you leverage those people and use them to a certain extent to draw more focus to your practice, and utilize their relationships, utilize their renown to build and grow your practice. So those are all the things, those are all the areas that you need to think about in terms of goal setting. So I'm going to hand you over to Erin now, and she's going to talk about how you target the right prospects.
Thanks, Trina. Hi, everyone. As Trina mentioned earlier, I'm Erin Victor. I spent 9 years in marketing and business development at a multi-practice firm in California before I joined Actionstep earlier this year. So now that we've gone over setting those higher level goals, we're going to get a little bit more granular on targeting the right prospects. So the next areas we're going to talk about, they're all tables that are in that marketing plan template that we have available to download on our website, and in the resources here. So the next 3 tables are going to include your key clients. So who do you have to keep happy and whose business can you expand? Your targets, who would you love to win business from? And your referral sources, who should you be rewarding? The next charts are where you'll start to detail what you're going to do with those specific clients, targets, referral sources. And you'll use those smart actions that Trina discussed earlier to map out your marketing activities so you can judge the process and then later report on the outcomes. So you'll use the first chart in our template to identify which clients are crucial to your practice or have the potential to grow into top positions. Try to write down at least 5 per practice area. It's just a good benchmark to shoot for. And perhaps 2 that you can actively broaden across the firm. So you might pull this information from different sources. One example might be you can pull a report of your top clients sorted by fees billed by practice area across the last several years and make that your start for your list. So we all know it's infinitely easier to get more active matters from current clients than to go out there and bring in new ones. And the best relationships are always the long-term ones. So if you can become an expert in your client's business and industry, then you can start to see around those corners for them and anticipate when they might have legal advice needs in the future. This applies to targets as well. With that in mind, how can you broaden your offering to your top clients to bring in more matters? If your firm has multiple practices, can you cross-market to those other practices? So for example, is your real estate developer client in need of some estate planning? The brand that you typically review their contracts for, their advertising contracts, do they have IP work that you can take on? You'll break it down by these areas on the chart. And along with the top clients and key contacts, you want to start thinking specifically about the opportunities. So can you build on the number of matters from that client, or is it a cross promotion activity? Now, what are your very specific goals for that very specific client? Is it an increase in revenue, like 50,000 in new business, or to bring in 3 new matters, or is it something else entirely? That's up to you. Then you'll want to assign a lead partner or a person in the related practice to be responsible for that relationship. Depending on the client, if it's, your top client that you really can't afford to lose, you may want to think about developing a client team to wrap around them. And then what actions are you going to take from there? And remember to make them smart actions that Trina discussed earlier. So if you're promoting the client across another practice, it might be a client dinner or a sports event to introduce a key partner from another practice. Then you'll want to think about the follow-up after that. Are there presentations or workshops you can offer? If you have corporate clients and work with in-house legal departments, can you offer some CLE credit in something informational that's beneficial to their business? Can you host an event of interest? Maybe it's an estate planning seminar or a series with external speakers. Maybe it's a panel on the future of commercial development in your city. It just goes back to those practices and goals that you set earlier and sectors. So this is, again, well, you're going to go back to those in the plan. Make sure the actions are related to your practice and industry goals. On the next chart, you'll list another 5 or so organizations to target. So these should be representative of the target sectors or client types you identified in your objectives again. So again, go back to that goal setting. Really look at those industries and practices that you want to grow or grow into. Your targets should have a relationship or identifiable route of access, and they should have a reason for why you can replace other firms or be better than other firms. To identify those key contacts, maybe you can start within your firm. Do you use a CRM? Maybe you can uncover some connections that you can leverage to get to that key contact introduction that you need. So this is where business development and marketing really overlap. And this is where I always encourage junior lawyers to nurture their personal networks. So you never know when that law school contact might end up in-house at a future target company, or, as a friend progresses in their career, maybe they end up in a decision-making role in the C-suite at a company that you're targeting. You never know. So if you keep in touch with your contacts, it does eventually pay off in the long run, but it is a long game. And again, marketing and business development are completely intertwined. So similar to the last chart here, you'll have the same columns here for your targets. Your smart actions might be a little different here. So the tough question is, how are you going to get in front of those key contacts? Is it through already established relationships? Like in our CRM example earlier, can someone you know in common propose a coffee introduction? If you don't have a clear relationship, where do those targets gather and interact? Is it on LinkedIn? Then you might need a targeted digital advertising campaign. Digital marketing can often be complex and intimidating if you're already not actively engaged in it. Do you need a paid search campaign, social media advertising, or some combination of different elements? There are so many different options. As part of our marketing series, we do have a webinar coming up in May that's completely dedicated to digital marketing. So be sure to check that out on our website and sign up for that. And they will dive into that a little bit more as well. Or are your targets members of an industry association or an industry-related charity or a business association like a local chamber of commerce? Perhaps you can look into sponsorships where you can be part of their events. You can build some personal relationships through networking. Maybe you offer your expertise through presentations via those organizations or ones that you can do in conjunction with them. So let's talk a little bit about referral sources. Again, similar chart to the last two here. So here we'll be looking at what part of your business is referral based or word of mouth, and have you been tracking that? If you have been tracking it, great. You can just run a report to find your top referral sources. Easy. If not, it's not too late to start. Can you make referral sources part of your client intake process? And then at least you can start gathering the data for next year's marketing planning, because you will do this annually. And it is a living document, so it can change. So maybe you just start by brainstorming this list and talking to your practice leaders. Who or what type of organization typically sends new clients your way and why? Who is your best route of access? And do they have potential to send future work your way? Think about how your firm can deepen those relationships. And those questions are key to your smart actions here. Perhaps you make some key introductions for that referral. So, for example, maybe you're an estate planning attorney and your referral source is a private wealth manager. Those referrals can go both ways. Maybe you just need to nurture the relationship outside of, talking shop, and just take them to a game or invite them to a charity event or something like that. Maybe you're a white collar litigator and you get your referrals from larger firms that you network with at bar association events. Just, think about where those referrals come from and how you can get in front of those people. So in summary here, what are the immediate actions and longer term actions you're going to take to look after that client, that target, that referral? The examples here are not exhaustive, and your list shouldn't be exhaustive. Like ideally 5 top clients, 5 targets, 5 referral sources, but that's up to you and your business and your practices. So stay focused on these, print off the tables, stick them up at your desk, so you know exactly what you should be doing on a day-to-day basis from a marketing and business development point of view. Okay, so let's talk about the marketing approach. Your target client and your target prospects are your guiding light here. Everything you do from a marketing or business development point of view should be geared towards them, and all of that should then wrap back up into those higher level practice goals that you set earlier. So what you're going to want to do next is start to detail the types of marketing activity that's going to give you the best access to those target sectors and those target client types. Think about where those targets exist. Where do they gather? Is it physical or virtual? And then focus your marketing on what gives you that access. Include some detail here on the marketing channels that you'll use to access and build your profile with your targets. This will be a mix of different things. Could be sponsorships, social media communications, webinars, or workshops that you want to run for this particular group of prospects. And it's not one size fits all, and there's not one thing that's going to be the magic bullet. So if you can ideally come at that target audience in a variety of ways, then they start to believe that you're omnipresent, and they start to recognize your brand, your personal brand or your firm brand. Another important thing to consider is networking. And again, business development is always going to be a big part of marketing. So you can have the biggest marketing budget in the world, but if you're not out there in the marketplace actively cultivating those relationships, your message is just going to fall on deaf ears. People want to do business with people that they know and trust, and that's not going to change even if we're in much more virtual world nowadays. There are always opportunities to get involved virtually as well. In person, maybe it's joining associations that are aimed at those target sectors. Maybe it's getting onto boards of those organizations. Can you do some research and find out what boards your targets are on and what charities they're involved in? What do they care about? So just looking for opportunities to engage a little bit more deeply with groups of people that are relevant to your practice areas. The types of client sectors, again, that you identified earlier, those are your goals. Those are your guiding light. Only invest in the activity that gives you better access to them or raises your profile with them. We recommend you include at least 3 to 6 overall marketing activities just to ensure that you can execute them effectively, timely, and measure them. So again, your plan, it'll change over time. These activities don't have to be set in stone. You can keep honing in on what mix works best for your practice, what you feel most comfortable with. Like, do what you're comfortable doing. If you're somebody who likes to write articles. If you're somebody who likes to network, join organizations. Just do what works for you. So the bottom line is there are many marketing channel options available, and there's not one size fits all answer for attracting new clients. Often it's the sum total of all those different touch points. And your marketing channels might include videos. They might include social media, traditional print, mail marketing, your business listings, your directory listings, search marketing, sponsorships, SEO, entertainment, website enhancements, events, all sorts of things can go into this. So then what about content marketing and email marketing? You have those as well. So think about if you want to throw those in the mix too. As long as they relate to that practice and sector goals that you set earlier. Getting your name out there through content really can make a big difference in your overall authority and the perception of your authority out there as a trusted advisor in your industry. And people will start to recognize you. So on our website, we have quite a few resources that dive further into the topic of channels and content marketing specifically. Take a look. We'll also link them in the resources here as well. So once you identify the activities that you want to target for the year, you want to calendar them out. If you don't have time-bound activities, they're never going to happen. So map out the year and give yourself a head start on planning for them. Then assign an owner or responsible partner and attach a KPI to each. And then you can start to measure. And with that, I'll turn it back over to Trina to talk about what's next and bringing your plan to life.
Thanks, Erin. Okay, so you've done a lot of hard work. You have established what your goals are going to be for the coming year or so. You have also decided what channels you're going to focus on, and your team have a pretty good idea about what their role is and what they're supposed to be doing. So you've done all the hard work, right? Well, unfortunately not. Obviously, creating the plan is really step one. And it's really important to think about how you're actually going to make sure that that plan is a living document that really supports all of your ongoing marketing activity and helps your team be successful. So how do we bring the plan to life? So there are a number of things that you can do to make sure that that plan doesn't get, dusty in the corner. That is very much something that you reflect on a regular basis. The first thing to do is to to set up a mechanism for tracking your goals and the measurements that you have applied to each of those goals. I mean, this can be something as automated as a dashboard, or as simple as a Word document that literally has just your goals and how you're measuring those goals listed, and you just make sure that on a monthly basis you're actually tracking what you're achieving in relation to each of those goals. So just having a central source for what you're tracking and how you're measuring it, that all of the team can look at and be abreast of, is really key. And second of all, meeting to share and to look at that particular tracking document is going to be really helpful. It also gives people an opportunity, if you're meeting, let's say once a month, to review your goals, review progress, review hurdles that you might be facing, challenges, or maybe new opportunities, and also see where things are really working. Where are things actually easier to achieve that maybe you want to lean on, and really just to kind of share your experiences and make sure that you're all aware of what's happening. The third thing is to hold each other to account on what you all have committed to. So if you've gone through the plan and allocated different roles to the team, you should have a pretty good sense as to what people are supposed to be doing. And ideally, you're rewarding the people who are doing what they've said they will do. And there is no need to necessarily punish those who are not necessarily getting on board. But ideally, in those rewards, you're looking at some commercial incentives to make sure that people actually do what they say they're going to do. The other piece that really helps to make sure that central marketing plan is brought to life is if each individual has their own either KPIs that are associated with performance, or their own individual marketing plan that supports the overall practice plan. That's obviously going to be very helpful in making sure that what they do feeds into your overall practice goals. And then I would also say that, particularly if this is the first time that you've put together a practice marketing plan, be prepared for it not to be perfect. And that isn't, the purpose of putting a marketing plan together is not to be perfect. There are going to be goals in there and activities in there that do not work, that do not make sense, that are too hard to achieve. And so the mindset really should be around, putting your back into things, seeing what results, and iterating on what it is that you have decided to go for and how you've approached it, and improving the way that you are going about things. And then the final thing is to spend your budget. It seems like a very, very obvious thing, but actually the amount of times you get to year end, or I would have seen legal teams get to year end and they wouldn't have spent their marketing budget, and then they would wonder why revenue isn't where they expect it to be for their practice. And it is very much an input output game. If you're putting the right effort and you're spending the money in the way that you've said you're going to, you should be able to see results at the end of the day. If you're not spending your budget, you're not giving yourself a chance to actually meet those goals. And so, on a monthly basis, again, tracking what you're spending, making sure you're spending on the things that you had committed to in your marketing plan, and just making sure that you're not forgetting about those activities. And sometimes, certainly as a marketeer, one of the things that I would have noticed when I was working in law firms was that the easiest way to sort of see whether people are actually doing enough marketing or enough business development is to look at what they're spending, to really see the expenditure that's associated with that practice's marketing activities. And you can kind of tell then what's going to happen at the other end, to the bottom line. So these are the things that you need to make sure are happening on an ongoing basis to make sure that your plan is brought to life. We can certainly spend a little bit more time around this particular end of marketing planning in a future webinar. But for now, that is it from me and Erin. It's been a pleasure to talk to you about marketing planning today, and I hope that you all have gleaned some good insights from our team around how you can implement some of these practices to really help your firm grow and help your firm get to where you want to from a market position and a growth point of view. If you have any questions, please do use the chat function in Gmail to send through some questions. And if you have any particular questions that you'd like answered in more depth, feel free to send an email to marketing@actionstep.com, and we would be very happy to set up a separate call or answer questions over email or some other means. So we look forward to talking to you again in future. And in the meantime, please do let those questions flow. Thank you.